In the news this week, government plans to monitor faith leaders have been scrapped. Research shows that the UK is the best in the world for end-of-life care. And a Scottish minister struggles to answer questions on the named person legislation. Hello and welcome to this week's news bulletin from the Christian Institute. A Home Office minister has signalled that the government now has no plans to introduce a national watch list for faith leaders. Mike Penning MP was responding to a concerned Christian Institute supporter. A leaked draft of the government's counter-extremism strategy indicated that church ministers and other faith leaders would have to be registered and forced to undergo training before they could work with the public sector. The Christian Institute welcomed the climb down, but warned that other aspects of the agenda remain deeply troubling.
It's shocking that politicians would even consider the idea of a national database of approved religious leaders. So the good news is that the government has decided to drop this proposal, but the bad news is that the government is pressing ahead with its plans for extremism disruption orders. This is alarming. We've seen Labour's notorious religious hatred bill or Section 5 of the Public Order Act. Both of these were detrimental to free speech, but EDOs are far, far worse. They're also completely unnecessary. The authorities already have extensive anti-extremism powers available to them. Yes, we do need to combat the Islamist threat, but EDOs aren't the way to do it. You can't protect democracy by undermining the very foundations of democracy.
This week, more than 50 Christian leaders wrote to the Daily Telegraph to warn that plans for extremism disruption orders, or EDOs, would be a disaster for the church. The letter, co-signed by Institute Director Colin Hart, raised concerns that the government's response to terrorism risks going seriously off track. Today, Christians can be labelled extremists by those who disagree with Christianity. For some such people, EDOs will be a gift. For the church, they'll be a disaster. A campaign supported by the Christian Institute and the National Secular Society has been launched to oppose EDOs. For more information, visit the website defendfreespeech.org.uk. A new study of 80 countries has revealed that the UK is still the best in the world for end-of-life care. The Quality of Death Index, created by the Economist Intelligence Unit, looked at a range of criteria, including staffing levels, affordability and quality of care. Researchers also interviewed 120 palliative care experts from around the world. The index scored the UK 93.9 out of 100, ahead of Australia on 91.6, and New Zealand ranked third with 87.6. Despite the UK coming top, the report said there is still room for improvement. The fact that the UK, an acknowledged leader in palliative care, is still not providing adequate services for every citizen underlines the challenge facing all countries. The UK was also ranked the best in 2010, when this report was last produced. Last month, MPs overwhelmingly rejected a bill to legalise assisted suicide. During the lengthy debate, MPs said assisted suicide is unnecessary in the UK because of the availability of such high-quality palliative care. Scotland's Children's Minister has again struggled to answer questions about the controversial named person scheme set to be rolled out next year. Speaking on BBC Radio Scotland's Kay Adams show, Aileen Campbell's attempts to defend the scheme suggested a gap between how it's publicised and how it will actually be implemented. She indicated that the named person would intervene where there are child protection concerns, whereas the legislation assigns a named person to every child to monitor their well-being or happiness.
If that named person, decides that the child's well-being is not being best served, in their professional opinion, do they have the final say?
Well, no, not unless there's a child protection issue.
Right,
So
okay, only if there's a child protection issue.
The named person plans also came in for strong criticism from a head teacher who said the lack of resources and funding made it unworkable.
If it's worked so well in Inverness for 7 years without legislation, why does it need the legislation? Because what legislation does is makes me accountable. And if I'm accountable for the health and well-being of the children in my care, then I want to make sure that the resource that I need is available to me. And I can tell you, from personal experience, resources not available to me currently.
Leslie Scott of Times Trust is part of the No to Name Persons campaign group and raised concerns that parents are marginalised under the plans.
Professionals are not always right. Professionals can get it wrong. But within this system, with the named person, the assumption is that the professionals are always right. Parents' views, parents' opinions are put way down the ladder and way down the scale. And if parents start to object, if parents start to say to professionals, no, you're wrong, we're right, then they're seen as a problem.
The Christian Institute, alongside other charities and concerned parents, has lodged an appeal against the legislation in the UK Supreme Court. And finally, a 35-year-old police officer who had locked-in syndrome has spoken of her gradual recovery from the condition. Clodagh Dunlop from Northern Ireland suffered a massive stroke in April and was left unable to move or speak for almost 3 months. She told the BBC she could hear everything that was going on around her, but couldn't respond. It was a very surreal experience. I wanted to shout out to everyone, "I'm here." I could see my family and partner Adrian were so upset and I wanted to reassure them, but I couldn't do anything. Many see locked-in syndrome as a condition from which people cannot recover. But on her birthday, Clodagh started to show signs of breaking free, and incredibly, she has now regained her speech and is learning to walk again. She told BBC NewsHour that she never gave up hope.
It was a remarkable moment because I went from angry to overjoyed.
And you see, in the 2.5 months before that, Clodagh, did you ever give up hope? Did you start to think, I'm going to be like this forever?
One of the things everyone told me about locked-in, and I didn't understand what locked-in was, so I always assumed I will get well again.
Well, that's all for this week. For regular updates and information on all of our stories, plus much more, visit our website at christian.org.uk. Until next time, goodbye.